Thank you for taking your seats. Thank you for being here tonight. I'd like to call the September 24th, 2019 City Council meeting to order, please. Roll call.
Mayor Wright?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown? Here. Councilmember Krupa?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Percival is absent.
Motion to excuse Councilmember Percival.
So moved.
This is the third time we've done this tonight. I think he's officially excused is right.
Can I get a clarification on the motion? Was it Meyer? Oh.
And that's approved 4-0. If you please stand for the invocation done by Reverend Rhonda Tretzton with the Interfaith Council and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Krupa.
Thank you. It is that we turn into this divine presence, I ask your blessing upon this room and all business that is discussed and decided here. I know and accept your hand is upon each of us this evening as the City Council and those who present or have questions. It is your guidance and love we recognize in all that unfolds this evening, and I am truly grateful for all that is and all that will be, knowing everything is in alignment with your perfect plan for all of us. Thank you, God, and so it is. Amen.
Please place your right hand over your heart and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go on to item number 4, City Attorney Closed Session Report, please.
Mayor, the City Council had 4 items on their closed session tonight. The first item was one item of anticipated litigation in the City of Hemet versus Dow Chemicals et al. Case. You had a briefing from your outside special counsel, authorized participation in a private mediation. Otherwise, there was no reportable action on that item. You had 2 public employee evaluations, one for the city manager and one for the city attorney. Council decided to hold those over until your next meeting on the count of you don't have all 5 members here today. Finally, you did have a bargaining session, meeting with your labor negotiator. You did complete that session. There was no reportable action on that item. That concludes my report.
And I think you've had, with regards to reportable action on the last council meeting.
At the last meeting, we did come down and convene and report out.
At 10:55.
10:55. There was no reportable action on the items that were on the agenda. The 2 public employee evaluation sessions, council did not get to because of the lateness of the hour. Those were continued to today.
And so will the minutes be corrected to reflect the reporting out? Thank you so much. Item number 5, communications from the public. Anyone who wishes to speak during the public comment period or on a particular item will be required to fill out a speaker slip. So if you want to speak, please do so by filling out the slip. There will be a 3-minute per person time limit for all comments, including public or quasi-judicial hearings. Written comments on any item may also be submitted to the city clerk to be included into this meeting record. It will not be read out loud by the city clerk. All who wish to speak, including council members and staff, need to be recognized. Members of the public shall comply with adopted rules of decorum. Resolution number 4545. A copy of the rules can be requested. Please turn off or mute your cell phones. And with that, city clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
Yes, Mayor, we have 4 requests to speak. The first is Judith McPherson.
Yes, my name is Judith McPherson. I
A
reside.
little bit further.
Oh, further.
No, down. Yeah, there you go. You have to stretch.
My name is Judith McPherson, and I reside in the unincorporated area just outside of city limits. I thank you, Mayor Wright. I think you already addressed one issue I was concerned with. I was trying to get information as to what was reported out of the second closed session at the last council meeting. But before I go, I want to thank the Hemet Police Department last night. My husband, who is soon to be an octogenarian, you never think we're going to get that old, called me last night in a panic. He had driven downtown to our downtown property, and he had seen somebody run away from, he couldn't explain to me, but some kind of a valve, and there was water going all over, and someone had tampered with, I guess it's a backflow valve, because we were required to install a very expensive fire sprinkler suppression system in the big building where Shooters is. And either homeless or somebody just causing harm was, hitting the valve, and water was going all over. So he called me. I called a couple of plumbers. I found one that was almost ready to go in a couple of hours. I thought, I don't want to let water go all over for that long. Couldn't find our maintenance man. And in the meantime, Hemet Police did respond to Officer Hyatt, who was very calm and kept my husband calm. He called, I guess might have called Public Works, I don't know, and described what was going on, and he fixed it. So thank you. We have plumbers in the Hemet Police Department. He knew which valve to shut off, and there it was. Okay, but thank you. I wanted to ask about, and this was also dealing with the closed session. I know you cannot divulge a closed session item. Oops, I spoke so long I lost it on my photo. Okay, I get it. But at the last meeting, item number 4, or do I want to say item number 3, there were, before the first closed session, there were 6 listed items for discussion per the government code that pertains. And Mr. Vail also announced an extra one due to the urgency of I believe it was the Toussaint matter. And I was here at the time that it was reported out, and I viewed the video online. And I did hear Mr. Vail discuss item number 1, that no reportable, and item 2, and I didn't hear the item numbers. Said that 2 were going to be continued later in the evening, but my focus is on item number 4 within number 3, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2 and E2. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen D2 more than a few times. But I've never seen E2, and so I have a question about that. And it says in that government code, paragraph E, subsection 2, that facts and circumstances, including but not limited to an accident, a disaster, incident, or transactional occurrence that might result in litigation against the agency and that are known to a potential plaintiff or plaintiffs, which facts or circumstances shall be publicly stated on the agenda or announced. And I could only find one other case in California where that particular paragraph and subsection was cited. I think it was a case in Palo Alto dealing with their school district and a lawsuit. And I'm focusing on which facts or circumstances shall be publicly stated, meaning the facts or circumstances, on the agenda, which it was not, or announced. And that's what I'm asking, whether or not that was done. Thank you.
Did you catch that?
I did. I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't remember which what subsection E pertained to at this time, so I'll look at the agenda.
Okay, and then would you get back with Mrs. McPherson?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Our next speaker?
Eileen Flores.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. I'm Eileen Flores, SCE's Government Relations Representative for the area. I'm here to provide a brief update on SCE's wildfire mitigation plan. As you already know, wildfires have devastated our state, and 10 of California's most destructive wildfires have occurred since 2015. At SCE, our top priority is ensuring the safety of our customers, communities, and employees, and we're working hard to reduce wildfire risk throughout our service territory. In February 2019, we filed our wildfire mitigation plan with the California Public Utilities Commission, and it has been approved by regulators. In short, this plan will further harden our infrastructure, bolster our situational awareness capabilities, enhance operational practices, and harness the power of data and technology to help mitigate wildfire risk. We've already begun implementing components of our wildfire mitigation plan. To further harden our infrastructure, we've replaced more than 150 miles of power lines with covered conductor. These power lines are covered with insulation material that mitigates the risk of wildfire. We're installing additional equipment such as fast-acting fuses, which help interrupt electric currents more quickly and should significantly reduce the risk of ignitions when there is a short circuit on our distribution lines. We're also adding more remote-controlled automatic reclosers on circuits serving high fire risk areas to prevent interrupted circuits from automatically re-energizing. We continue to inspect all of our overhead power lines and equipment in high fire risk areas to identify and remediate potential issues outside of our standard inspection cycles. This may involve helicopters conducting aerial inspections. To bolster our situational awareness capabilities, we've been installing more weather stations, advanced weather modeling software and computer hardware, and high-definition cameras in high-fire risk areas. We're also doing a lot to enhance our operational practices, which includes the launch of an even more robust vegetation management program. And we've been enhancing our public safety power shutoff program, also known as PSPS, the practice of preemptively turning off power during high fire risk weather conditions. For more information, I encourage everyone to please visit sce.com/wildfire. And since it is National Preparedness Month, I encourage everyone to update their contact information with Southern California Edison through our website or through our customer service hotline to receive pertinent outage or PSPS notifications. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update.
You really did. You have 13 seconds.
That's true. I saw the yellow light come on. That's why I was like, talk faster.
Good job. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the information. Our next speaker, please.
Up next is Marianne DeRowan, followed by Patricia Gregory.
Good evening. Last time I spoke and talked about Seven Hills getting slurried, you misunderstood my point. I did not say they slurried in front of your house, but they did do your neighborhood. Mayberry, Alessandro, parts of Oakland, Santa Fe, Menlo, parts of Park, Acacia, Girard, any of these streets could have used slurrying a lot more than the neighborhood of Seven Hills. You could have put your neighborhood on phase 3 or 4, but no, it was number 1. Is that because election year is coming up? A resident was heard saying that they are getting special treatment because the mayor lives there. How is this okay? Before you try and argue your point, you really can't. The perception is you spent the money that could have been used on streets that are more heavily traveled than your neighborhood. What does that say about our mayor? That says that her focus is more on where she lives while she lets all the other roads in Hemet fall into disrepair. Shame on you.
I'm going to respond to that because the mayor had nothing to do with the plan or where they chose they were going to slurry first. I had no idea. So you can take it for what it's worth. By all means, ask our Public Works Department, and I hope that they would give you the honest answer. I had nothing to do with the plan of where the slurry was going to be applied. So you can believe what you want.
And I'll just make a brief comment on that. The council doesn't single-handedly choose the streets that get slurried. We do have a report that specifies the streets that require, whether it's slurry seal or rehab. And so that's the basis that we use to put forward whatever contracts that we deem necessary. So it's not a council member driven process. It's a staff driven process.
Next speaker.
Patricia Gregory.
I just want to reiterate one thing that Mary Ann said. The point is, the streets that were slurried first were probably some of the least needed streets in Hemet. Whoever made that decision, it was wrong, because streets that are rarely traveled on were slurried when there's streets with holes and all kinds of nonsense, and they're at the bottom of the list. Okay. Next, on August 13th, 2019, I sent an email to the custodian of records requesting the chart of accounts and the general ledger for the city of Hemet. I've had no response. So before I submit this violation of the Freedom of Information Act, I thought I'd like to go on record to say that this is the second request that I'm making for these documents. I'm not sure why they weren't provided before, because up till now, every time I've submitted a request, I've gotten a very prompt response. But now, nothing. So I would like to know, or I would like someone to follow up as to the 8/13/2019 email regarding records from the city of Hemet. Thank you.
I can respond to that. I just talked to the deputy city clerk and myself. Neither one of us have gotten any requests from you. So if you would like to get my email, who did it go to? It didn't.
I sent it to this custodian of records, city of Hemet. Same person. I sent it to Sarah McCombs, probably, email.
Probably, and so that's probably why we didn't receive it.
So you don't
So we don't.
forward email that was sent to the prior city clerk?
I don't have access to her email. Okay.
Can I give,
Well,
can I give
yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
No, Mayor, right there, no more speakers.
Thank you. So we will go on to, I'm going to, Yes, 5A. Presentation of the city's new Hemet website, City of Hemet website.
Thank you, Mayor. So for the last, I'd say maybe 6-7 months, time kind of gets all jumbled together. The staff across all of the organization have been working on updating the city's website. We are scheduled to go live Thursday, I believe, at 11 o'clock a.m. And so as a result of discussions with all of our departments, we've updated the website. We've made some buttons so that the public can access the website a little bit easier, as well as made some other changes to make it more user-friendly. So with that being said, I'll hand over some time to Scott. I should mention before I do that, this project was entirely grant funded. There was no general fund monies that were used for this project. And so the agreement that we did sign stipulates that in about 4 or 5 years we will have another refresh of this website. So with that being said, I'll hand it over to Scott, who really took the lead in getting this squared away.
Sure. The current website the city has obviously is pretty old, 7 years old. It's got about 500 pages total in it. And the issue that we really have with it is it cannot be viewed really easy on mobile devices.
Can you speak a little bit closer to the mic, because I don't think they can hear you very
Sure. Again, the current website is 7 years old. It's got roughly 500 pages and requires a dedicated mobile app to be really clearly viewed on a mobile device. That could be your phone, your iPad, tablets, whatever. The issue is that's about 50% of our traffic, and that continues to grow. So when we looked at doing the new website and looked at reviewing this thing, the thought was we need to focus on accessibility. The website that you're currently seeing, one of the issues there, or one of the main goals of it was a responsiveness in design. Make sure that, again, it will render on any kind of a device, no matter if it's a desktop or cell phone, and it does not require a mobile app. The mobile app that we currently have will be phased out, and this website will be what we utilize from here on out. The website also needed to be compliant with ADA requirements, making sure that they were compliant with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, and ADA Section 508 and 2.0A and AA. And a lot of gobbledygook, but what that main thing is when you go and you look at images on a website, you hover over those images, and usually it'll have like a little text tag. That text tag is very important to somebody who can't see screen readers or has real hard time seeing, because that kind of describes what that image is. One of the other things that we needed to do is when you go and look at links on the city's webpage, in parentheses beside those content or that page that actually would open up, what is it? Is it a Word document? Is it a PDF? Those are required that we actually put those on those pages. We can't just get away with not doing it. So again, compliancy and making sure that it was accessible was a high thing that we put on as far as priority. Compatibility, again, with any kind of assisted technology, screen readers for non-visual access. What we did as far as the training portion of this is, we also have to train staff in how to maintain it. With no maintenance, it becomes stale content. Nobody sees any value from that. So over the last 4 days, about 2 weeks ago, we completed this. 24 staff have been trained in how to maintain and keep up their web pages. So ongoing, there'll be several people in each department that can take and follow up on making sure that that content is fresh. Our go live date for this website is September 26th, 2019 at 11 a.m. The website will change. We're used to going to www.cityofhemet.org. That will be no longer. That will be changed. Our new website will be https://www.hemetca.gov. One of the reasons in going with the .gov address is there's a lot of people that will try to forge websites. You'll click on a link thinking you're going to a city's website, and you won't be at a city's website. It's a little bit harder for somebody to forge a .gov address because it requires you to be registered through the .gov registry, which is government. So it's done by the Department of General Services. So they will have a little bit more of a time or a hard time trying to mimic or somehow put an image or a link to a website that's not ours. So again, trying to ensure transparency in what we're putting out, ensuring that it's viewable by whomever needs to view it, that it's accessible on any type of device. Those were the main kind of components that we wanted to view on this.
Thank you, Scott. And as we start reviewing the analytics associated with traffic, who's visiting, what are the features of the website that the public will be accessing, we do have the ability to move some of those hot buttons around so that we can obviously accommodate the public and make it more user-friendly for everybody. So you can see we have some stories on there that have been updated that will reflect once it does go live on Thursday. So looking forward to that date, Thursday. Scott, thank you for everything that you've done to get that taken care of, and to the staff that went through that training and made sure that the content stays current and that we're staying up to date on what's going on with the website. So thank you, Scott.
How are we getting this information out to the public for them to know what to use?
So we'll be generating some social media posts. I believe that if anybody tries to visit cityofhemet.org, will they be referred back to?
They will be redirected. Anybody who tries to access the application on their phone, they'll also be redirected.
So if you try going to cityofhemet.org, you'll just be redirected to this website. So there isn't anything different that the public will have to do to access the site.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, just one question. For those people who have signed up for notifications from different commissions and different meetings at the city, will they be automatically still linked in here for accessibility like they have in the old website when we sign up for stuff, notifications?
Correct. Every notification that we had accessible on the old site, all of the people who had subscribed to those notifications, that all transferred over. So all of that remains.
Thank you.
Carly, do you have a question, comment? Russ?
Question, is that going to affect city employee email address?
Not currently. We do have plans eventually to move Hemet, cityofhemet.org, move it away and go with email that's going to be hemetca.gov. When we do that, there will be a transitional process where email accounts, if they send an email to cityofhemet.gov address, it will forward over to the hemetca.gov. So there will be no downtime or no emails missed.
Okay, thank you.
And once again, we'll mention that this was grant funded. So thank you, Scott, for getting this done.
And
Manager.
WRCOG
And
providing the
WRCOG
grant.
for providing the grant. Thank you so much. Looking forward to this because it's long overdue. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 6, receive and file. Can I have a motion to receive and file the warrant register and investment portfolio for June 2019 and July 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. And that's approved 4-0. Item number 7, consent calendar. Oh, I do that every single time. I got this thing about, I know why, because we talked about investment portfolio and
Pardon? We could have received and filed all of them. To receive and file all of them. But you just mentioned the warrant register July.
Oh, well, I meant all of them.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion
We
for the rest of
approve
it.
60. I'll second.
Please vote. Sorry about that. I thought that when I was mentioning that, it identified all of them. And with that, it's approved 4-0. Now we'll go on to consent calendar item number 7. Any members of the council that would like to pull any of the consent items?
Just the minutes for the 2 corrections that Deputy City Clerk sent to us today. The one comment on Hemet PD community thing. Carly made the comment, not me. And then there was a comment that was attributed to, I think, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, and it was actually Councilmember Percival that had made it, and I believe Clay has already made those corrections.
That's correct.
Yes, and we do have the corrected minutes, amended minutes here in front of you. Okay.
And I'm going to pull 7C.
Me too. 7C?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and so I would like to pull 7E. Have a brief discussion on that. And with that, there's no other, are you going to pull any? Okay. With that, may I have a motion to approve 7A as amended, 7B, 7D.
I move approval of 7A as amended, 7B, and 7D.
Second.
Please vote. And that's approved 4-0. We'll go back to item 7C. Carly?
Sorry, I had to pull up my notes here. Okay, so I have a few things on this. AMR has the exclusive contract for the Riverside County Ambulance Service. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and is that contract made so that they can make profit for their services?
That contract is, they are for profit. They do compete. They have an exclusive operating contract with the county of Riverside, not the city of Hemet, who is responsible for managing that for the county.
Okay, and then the whole reason that we get this is because they are required to show up in a timely manner or they pay fees?
When you say get this, I'm not, what are you referring to?
their contract requires that they show up in time?
Yeah,
Or
there's
that's
response.
how we get the money?
Right, there's
From the money?
response time criteria that's established in the contract. The county monitors that as part of the performance criteria, and as a result of that, and I might add, less than 10% of the time they don't meet that response criteria, there are fees that are generated, penalty fees. This council took action in 2017 to allow the fire department access to the penalty fees. Prior to that, that went strictly into the general fund. By contract statute, by our contract with the county, we're required by ordinance to use that only for EMS. So this council took that action. Since then, we've benefited over $260,000 worth of purchases that every year are used specifically for EMS system enhancements. And what you have before you is an example of one of those. You've taken previous action when we have a need to authorize releasing those penalty fees for specific purposes.
So it would be fair to say that we are using this money and we're putting it back into increasing our response times. I mean, essentially, because our response times.
I think what you're referencing is to improve our response times and to prevent any delays. This is part of a system enhancement, yes.
Okay, so AMR was recently sold for $2.4 billion, and based on that purchase price, it's safe to assume that they're making, roughly $1 million a day. And I'm not talking about Hemet AMR, I'm talking about AMR, the corporation. So, as our city manager always asks us, what's the highest, is this the highest and best use for this fine money? And I'm referring to the purchases for the AMR units.
Right. In the staff report, we're purchasing units for each one of our frontline fire apparatus to secure the Knox key. One of the deficiencies we've had in place for several years now is the ambulances, for whatever reason, never had the Knox key. This is, I'll politely put it, legacy issue. In fact, what it caused to happen is the police department had to develop their own separate entity, Knox key, and the fire department maintained that key to themselves and did not provide that to the provider. When I use the term systems enhancement, the first step I made was to contact, there are 3 levels. I have to account for this. I have to get it authorized and make sure that it's within the alignment of the intent, which I did. Secondly,
who authorizes it?
The REMSA. And by contract, the contract states that we have to use those monies for system enhancements. My professional input as your fire chief, this was a system enhancement. I did have recently a citizen complaint brought to my attention. The question was simple. I observed an ambulance parked outside an apartment complex that did not have access, and it seemed like several minutes before the fire department came back and opened the gate. Typically, fire department will keep that gate open. Occasionally, that may not happen. In my professional view, the system only is as good as all the pieces that come together. One delay is one delay too many. So when I started researching this, the easiest and most reliable component is to ensure that all components of our response system have access via the Knox key. This is not unusual. It's the industry standard throughout the industry. And I might add my previous agency, that is standard. That's what I'm used to. We did reach out to Palm Springs, one of our local agency here, who has the same process in place. We took it a step further for the accountability piece, and that's what's before you today, is purchasing the boxes that will secure the keys. And by the way, only a government agency has access and can issue the Knox keys, not a private entity. As far as the box itself, it'll be Wi-Fi. We'll be able to, it'll track when the key is used, the day, the time, etc. So that's the accountability piece. We took it one step further to include a letter of agreement between the fire department, my office, and AMR operations in Hemet. The goal is they deploy, as I'm sure you're aware, 18 units countywide, and they have a dynamic staffing, which means they can be anywhere. This will be for five units that respond out of the AMR office here in Hemet, and those are the 5 units that we primarily run with. it's certainly a good step in the right direction. And again, the systems piece is important to understand. And that is really the only decision tree that I have that is not using general fund money. It is not using Measure U money. And as if I may just give you a rundown of what this has helped us do. We've replaced our radios and base stations at all the stations. We've purchased our EMD training software, which was over $80,000 for EMD. Radio pre-programming, our mobile Toughbook laptop replacements for our units, a defibrillator, CPR Medigans, miscellaneous EMS equipment, and it's paid for the initial RFP consultant for our radio study that we're doing concurrently with the police department. So every year I have to prepare a report back to the county that shows what we've purchased. That's the inventory. But this individual process, in addition to the Knox box security devices, is for additional software and related equipment that we need for upfitting Medic 2 and some other additional EMS needs. And again, it's working as intended. It's within the scope of how we're directed to use it.
I think at this point, it's a council discussion as far as we have no business spending any money on AMR, is my point. If Home Depot needs carts that we think would be better for elderly, do we go buy them for them? I mean, if we think that the process in the emergency room could be sped up by more x-rays, do we buy x-rays? We don't do that. And the point is we are using money that, well, besides the fact that they are worth so much money, AMR, and that they could do it, and why don't they? That's the question. Why, if they wanted the Knox box keys, they could do that. I went to school, my sister and I went to school with the Fritzingers, Hemet Valley Ambulance. They've been around for years. They were bought out by AMR. My sister was actually an EMT and worked for Jack Hansen. They've been getting into apartment complexes for years without a Knox box key, as he said. And maybe this is a code enforcement problem, because what I've heard is that from AMR employees that they're not given the updated codes. Their Opticom isn't working because they have the clickers to get in the buildings or into the garages or the closed gates. I think you guys have that at Four Seasons. And if there's a problem with their communication to AMR, then the owners of the facilities need to fix the problem, not the city of Hemet. That shouldn't be on our backs. And it's just like other things that we're going to talk about later tonight. I mean, we've kind of come to the conclusion that the city of Hemet is not in a financial position to be putting money out for other companies. I mean, if they want Knox boxes, they can get them. The other issue that I have on this is that we're also okaying $33,000 of soft equipment. And what other department is allowed to request $33,000 of unitemized purchases? Why even bring it to council then? If there's an expense that needs to be made every other, even when we have the police department and their grants down to the penny, they itemize that out. And that's free money to us. So if we're going to be across the board the same, then we need to keep our standards the same for everybody.
Linda?
Yes. I just wanted to thank you. We had talked about this afternoon, and I had some questions on the usage of the funds and what it was to be used for and why. And quite frankly, to use the money that is actually paid by AMR to help our citizens in a life and death situation, I think the money is well spent. And the fact that County EMS has sent an email certifying that it is the money's expended for the EMS system enhancements is one of the purposes of this. And I just want to thank you for getting that information back to me this afternoon.
You're welcome.
And if we one more thing, if we use our money to enhance AMR's response times, then we can just not have, you see the problem? We're using our money to enhance their response times. They need to fix the problems that they have with these businesses that are not. Otherwise, we're funding, and which is going to end up taking away our late fees.
If I may make just one additional comment, and certainly appreciate your questions and inquiry, council member. My decision tree is very simple. I ultimately work to ensure that we respond in a timely, efficient fashion to all our residents. And where we have opportunities to improve that system, that is my responsibility, and I think that's what the community demands. I'll give you another example of you had some history with Hemet Valley, because that goes back a long ways. We, for instance, lend communications equipment to Mercy Air. And the reason we do that is that the communications is enhanced, our ability for our company officers or command level staff to talk directly to the air ambulance. That's an example of sharing that. They're not, I don't view them as a private resource. I view them, both Mercy and AMR, as an integral component of our EMS service delivery system. And so that's what I want to make sure that we don't lose sight on, and certainly respect your questions you're asking, but my decision tree was straightforward. And I might add, we've brought similar items to the $33,000 question. We've had 3 other similar in the last 2 years that we brought before this council, and the council has approved this. The process that is involved is I have to come to council and get authority to release that money that can only be used by the fire department for EMS enhancements. So we go through that process. So that $33,000 is an aggregate of what we determine our needs are going to be for soft equipment. It may be additional suctions or automatic defibrillators or whatever it happens to be. But we follow the process we follow the city's procurement process to the T with anything. So if it goes above a threshold and it requires council authority, we do that. But certainly this is part of a process that's been engaged for the last, actually since my tenure here. And we've refined it, we've made it better. And the accountability piece for me is in place. And again, we have to report this to the county. And before we do anything like this, we engage in a discussion to ensure it's appropriate for its use. And so that's why it's before you today. Thank you.
Chief, I have a question. Since we have automatic aid agreements and mutual aid responses pretty regularly, CAL FIRE, which provides service countywide to the unincorporated areas, their Knox box key fits our, does their key work in our systems?
I can't confirm that. I have my technical expert. No, they do not.
Okay, so in an incident where we're deployed and all of our resources are committed on a major fire and supplemental, another fire happens, so we get mutual aid from CAL FIRE, and they come to a gated complex. So what would be their access option at that point?
Well, you bring up a good point. There are often times where AMR arrives prior to Hemet Fire Department units. In that scenario, we have additional AMR units stationed in the city when we have a drawdown or something like that. So the typical scenario would be either the AMR unit is there, they have access, or they make other types of arrangements to get into the complex.
So I guess, kind of a rhetorical question, but maybe food for thought downstream on a countywide basis, that there would be some benefit to the end user if there was a universal access system countywide. Not what we're dealing with here tonight, but right. Just in listening to the discussion, that kind of popped into my mind. Reflecting back on my previous professional experience with Knox box keys, I know that they're highly controlled. In fact, the agency that I used to work for, law enforcement, I tried to secure some Knox box keys for our patrol cars from LA County Fire, and they wouldn't turn loose of them. They were highly controlled, and there was no way I could go high enough in that organization to get it. So what the end result with that was, it had a negative impact on our police department's response time to gated communities because we didn't have the Opticom system. And actually, we had a cumbersome system of garage door openers across the sun visors, and every patrol car key ring had about a dozen separate keys that we had to figure out which one is going to work. And then some of them had keypads to get in. So I'm highly supportive of anything that we can do to streamline and make efficient access into any gated community. And the bottom line opinion that I have on that, it's the end user. It's the recipient of the service that's needed. That's our number one priority. I don't think that a person that's having a cardiac arrest situation really cares too much about the uniform or the shoulder patch or how they get in, other than the fact that they get in as quickly as possible. So if this project is going to meet that end result objective, I'm supportive of it.
Thank you.
City Manager.
Yeah, I had some of the same questions, and I know the chief and I spoke yesterday about some of those concerns that I had too, and we discussed. One of the things that we did talk about was, in the instance, and everyone will recall, just a couple weeks ago we had the fire that was next door, and so one of the operational concerns that I had was, if all of our units are deployed to assist with an emergency like that, and it just so happens that AMR is having to be the first on scene, we want to make sure that we're providing a level of service to the community that is reliable. And so that is one of the questions or the discussions that we had yesterday, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And as well as Palm Springs, I believe, does that as well. And then the final thing, if you could just provide some more detail, I know you mentioned it briefly, the $33,000, as things come up, is that what you're seeing in terms of supplies being?
Yeah, I try to minimize the impact on bringing stuff before the council unnecessary, so we try to project what the needs are going to be. So instead, let's just say for the discussion, we were only requesting $17,000 to cover the cost of this, and we could come and request authority to use $17,000 using the EMS penalty fee. We still have other needs that we're going to draw from that fund, and that's why that's included. And that's been consistent. We bundle those requests through good planning, future planning, and addressing those needs, and trying to minimize the back and forth to a minimum. But I can assure this council that we follow to the T the purchasing procurement process and the rules for that. That's just simply a business decision. We're trying to work smarter.
And I have something to say about that. We are not following any procurement process. When we have a $25,000 threshold and we're giving them a blank check for $33,000 for soft costs, that is not following any financial fiduciary responsibility on our part, not on our five. That is absolutely not following any policy that we have, because what we're doing right now is going to let every department head know in here that if you want anything, just go ahead and give me a soft cost and I'll get you a blank check. That's what we're doing right now. That is what we're doing. And you want to worry about the services delivered? So my question, Mr. Vail, is we are now responsible for the services that AMR provides to our citizens. And if the Knox box keys, which are keyed, and the way key, the keyway that they have programmed, is linked to the Hemet Fire Department, does the city have any liabilities when these unsworn employees that work for AMR and come and go and something comes up missing? What's the liability on the city because there are boxes? And how many businesses up and down Florida Avenue and in the city are there? And would we have to rekey if something came up missing?
I don't think I can answer all of those questions, although I can say if we generally don't have a duty to provide AMR with keys, if we undertake to provide keys and we're negligent in doing so, we provide the wrong keys or they're miskeyed, There could potentially be some type of liability. It would depend on the specific case and the facts, and I don't know enough about the rollout of the program or how many businesses are involved to answer your other question.
And my other question for our city manager is, these keyways that supposedly, if this program is rolled out, have NOx intents, each employee will have a code. And that code is the accountability piece. So are we going to be responsible for issuing keyway codes to each AMR employee so that we know, or is it going to be unit-based? Is it going to be whoever feels like having the code?
So maybe the chief can touch on some of the operational deployment of that system so that everyone knows.
Part of the letter that we have of agreement, we follow and mirror the Palm Springs model, for lack of a better term. There'll be numbers per unit or per individual. And we have an agreement in principle with the management staff at AMR. The good thing with this system that we're purchasing, it's cloud-based and it maintains a tracking of, so if you're 101, whenever 101 makes access and uses the key, it timestamps the time the key was used, the time the key was put back. So there is an electronic trail of accountability on how that key was deployed. So it's a fairly straightforward issue. Again, I'm viewing this as an operational enhancement to ensure that we reduce the response times that oftentimes occur when the gate's not open and maintained. I'm not in the least bit concerned, other than to tell you that also our AMR personnel are professional. They're licensed paramedics. They have the same stringent requirements that our firefighter paramedics have to go to in maintaining that licensure. So it's a professional judgment. I think it's sound, and I think, again, it's focused on ensuring that we're providing the best service possible to our residents. That's the bottom line.
Yes. Oh. And another thing is, we talk up here about how high our litigation fees are, and we are opening ourselves up right here. We complain and wonder why we're sued in everybody's business. This is why. Because, yeah, we're generous and we want to help. It's not that we don't want to help the citizens that are having problems and you can't get the gate open. But there are responsibilities that where we have to draw the line. Our responsibility is our fire department and our police department. That's our EMS. AMR is not our responsibility.
Well, I would disagree that AMR is not an integral part of our EMS system, and they are certainly. That's why we train together when we do the hospital.
We're financially responsible for AMR.
No, I
a
didn't say that.
$2.4 billion company.
That's not what I said.
Sounds like it.
I said they. If you would listen to what I'm saying.
I hear you.
We train with AMR, with Hemet Fire, with CAL FIRE, with Saboga Fire. On 2 occasions, I've personally witnessed the interaction of all of those agencies on a hospital disaster drill. And those players are professionals. If I'm going to trust a paramedic in an AMR ambulance with drugs that are going to save my life if I need it, if I'm going to trust them with the ability to drive lights and siren, violation of any vehicle codes,